The rain in New York never really stopped. It just changed shape, drizzle on one street, fog on another, and sometimes a silver mist clinging to windows like memory. Naomi Carter wiped her paint-stained hands on her jeans, staring at the half-finished portrait in front of her. The face on the canvas was blurred at the edges, eyes half-formed, mouth soft and uncertain, as if the woman herself didn't want to be found. Her daughter, Ari, sat cross-legged on the floor beside her, sketching a sun that looked too bright for a day like this. "Mum," Ari said, her curls bouncing as she looked up, "do you ever paint happy people?" Naomi smiled faintly. "Sometimes, but sadness holds still longer. Maybe you should paint me next," the girl said. "I'm happy." Naomi laughed, the kind of quiet, tired laugh that came from too many late nights and too much instant coffee. "You are, baby. You really are." Outside, thunder rumbled low, rolling between the buildings. She didn't hear the knock on the door until the second time. A man in a black coat stood under the dripping awning, holding a sleek envelope. No logo, no name. Only her address typed cleanly across the front. Double quotes, "Ms. Naomi Carter." He asked, "Yes." He handed her the envelope. "Mr. Vale requests your presence tomorrow at 10. The Vale Gallery, 5th Avenue. She blinked. "I think you have the wrong, not according to Mr. Vale," the man said, his voice polite but absolute. "He said you'd understand once you saw the letter." Before she could ask another question, he turned and disappeared into the rain. Naomi closed the door, locking it out of instinct. The envelope was heavy, the paper thick. She opened it carefully, revealing a single card embossed in silver. "Ms. Carter, I've been following your work since the Glass and Skin series. Your art carries the kind of truth money can't buy. I'd like you to paint my portrait. Landon Vale underneath, in smaller writing. The compensation will be whatever you deem fair." Naomi frowned. She hadn't exhibited since before Ari was born, nearly 7 years. The Glass and Skin series was the one that almost made her famous. Until her husband died and the gallery withdrew their contract. She whispered, "How the hell does he even know my name?" That night, she couldn't sleep. The rain whispered against the windows, like soft applause or warning. Landon Vale, even she had heard of him. The man who turned his father's small gallery into an empire, Vale Industries, a network of museums, art funds, luxury brands. The press called him the collector. Others called him the ghost with a wallet. He rarely appeared in public. When he did, he was all silver suits, sharp eyes, and silence. Naomi sat at the kitchen table, staring at the letter. She told herself to ignore it. People like Landon Vale didn't just stumble into the lives of single mothers living in Brooklyn walk-ups with broken radiators, but something about the words, "Your art carries the kind of truth money can't buy." It felt personal, almost, like he'd seen her before. The next morning, the world woke clean and grey. Naomi dropped Ari off at school, promising she'd be back by 3. The Vale Gallery stood on 5th Avenue, a cathedral of glass and steel that caught the light like a prism. The kind of place where silence was curated, not born. Inside, everything gleamed. Marble floors, mirrored walls, and paintings so perfect they looked untouchable. A woman at the reception desk looked up. "Ms. Carter." Naomi hesitated. "Yes, I have an appointment. Mr. Vale is expecting you." Top floor. The elevator ride felt endless. When the doors opened, she stepped into a loft, drenched in winter light. Huge windows overlooked Central Park. And there he was. Landon Vale stood by a wall of unfinished paintings, all portraits, all female, each one missing something. An eye, a mouth, a face turned away. He turned as she entered. Tall, pale, impeccably dressed. The kind of beauty that wasn't warmth, but precision. "Miss Carter," he said, voice smooth as glass. "Thank you for coming." Naomi cleared her throat. "I wasn't sure I should." He smiled slightly. "You're here. That's enough." He gestured toward the paintings. "Do you recognize any of them?" Naomi frowned. "No, should I?" He looked at her for a long moment. "I hoped not." She stepped closer to one of the canvases. The woman's profile was incomplete, but the brushwork, soft yet deliberate, was hauntingly familiar. "Who painted these?" she asked. "You did," Landon said quietly. Naomi froze. "What?" He walked to the nearest portrait, touched the frame. "I bought them under an alias years ago. They were part of a private collection. But these," he looked at her, eyes unreadable, "these are all yours." Her voice shook. "That's impossible. I never painted them." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Then how do they all look like you?" Naomi didn't move for a long time. The words, "they're all yours," hung in the air like a mistake no one wanted to claim. "That's not possible," she said finally. "These paintings, they don't belong to me. I've never seen them before." Landon tilted his head slightly, studying her as if she were one of the canvases on his wall. "And yet they bear your signature." He crossed to a drawer, pulled out a worn sketchbook, and placed it in her hands. Her breath caught. It was hers, the same brand, the same embossed corner. The first page bore her name in graphite, Naomi Carter, 2014. She looked up, voice trembling. "Where did you get this?" Landon's tone was calm. "An estate auction in Paris, 2 years ago. The seller claimed it came from a private collector in London. I didn't believe him until I opened it." Naomi flipped through the pages. Her sketches, or what looked like hers, filled the book. Women's faces she didn't remember drawing, but in every curve, every shadow. There was her hand, the same instinctive strokes she'd spent a lifetime developing. She whispered, "Why would someone forge my work?" Landon's gaze didn't waver. "Maybe it wasn't forged. That doesn't make sense. Neither does talent that feels borrowed from somewhere else." His voice was quiet, measured, but there was an undertone there, something like recognition, as if he'd been waiting years for her to walk through that door. Naomi set the sketchbook down. "You didn't ask me here to talk about lost paintings." "No," he said, almost gently. "I asked you here to paint one." He gestured toward an empty easel near the window. A single canvas waited there, untouched. "I want you to paint me," Landon said. "From your eyes, your truth." Naomi blinked. "You could have any artist in this city." "I don't want any artist in this city," he interrupted softly. "I want you." The way he said it, not demand, not flattery, but something between confession and command, made her stomach tighten. "I don't paint people anymore," she said. "I know, then why ask me?" "Because sometimes," he said, eyes steady on hers, "we need someone who stopped painting to see what's missing." For a moment, the room was silent except for the faint hum of the city below. Naomi felt the walls closing in, the smell of turpentine, the golden light on the canvases, the strange way every brushstroke in this place seemed to breathe. "Let's say I agree," she said carefully. "What are your conditions?" Landon smiled, slow, deliberate. "You'll work here, in this studio. I'll provide everything you need. Payment, materials, time, and my daughter. She's welcome here too. There's a private floor for staff and families. She'll be comfortable." Naomi frowned. "You already knew I had a daughter." He met her gaze. "I don't make offers without knowing who I'm offering to." Something about that answer sent a shiver through her. He handed her another envelope. Inside a contract, embossed in Vale Industries letterhead. The terms were absurd. Unlimited budget. Full creative control. A completion deadline. None. Double quotes. Mr. Vale, Landon, he corrected quietly. Landon, she said, uneasy. This is too generous. He stepped closer, close enough for her to catch the faint scent of cedar and oil paint. Then name your price. She shook her head. It's not about money. He smiled faintly. That's why I chose you. Naomi exhaled slowly. What do you expect from me, really? Landon's eyes softened, and for the first time she saw something behind the precision, exhaustion. Grief, maybe. I expect you to see me, he said. The way those paintings saw you before you knew they existed. She hesitated. That sounds insane. Art usually does, he replied. She almost laughed, but couldn't. He walked to the window, hands in his pockets, gaze drifting over the skyline. My father used to say, every artist paints one face over and over, he murmured. The face of the one thing they can't forget. Naomi folded the contract, the paper trembling slightly between her fingers. And what can't you forget? He turned to her. A woman who doesn't exist. That evening, Naomi left the gallery feeling the weight of something she couldn't name. The rain had stopped. The city shimmered like wet glass under the streetlights. She tucked the contract into her bag, still unsigned, and headed home. On the subway, she opened her phone. An unknown number had texted her. Don't trust him. You've painted him before. She froze. The message had no name, no reply option. Just that, and when she looked up, her reflection in the subway window wasn't hers anymore. It was a blurred version of a face she'd seen on Landon's wall. The elevator hummed like a heartbeat as it rose through the Vale Tower. Naomi stood inside, clutching a canvas roll under one arm, Ari's backpack under the other. The number 33 glowed in gold at the top of the panel. Ari peered up. Do rich people really live this high, Mum? Naomi smiled faintly. Apparently, the doors slid open with a soft chime. The 33rd floor didn't look like an office or a penthouse. It looked like a museum. Glass, concrete, muted light. Everything smelled faintly of cedar and turpentine, and the air felt curated. A woman in black approached, tall, precise, the kind of elegance that didn't breathe much. Ms. Carter, she said, Mr. Vale is expecting you. Her tone carried no warmth, but no malice either, just efficiency. And your daughter? She'll stay in the residence wing, Naomi said, gripping Ari's hand. The woman nodded. We've prepared a space for her. The residence wing looked nothing like Naomi's apartment in Brooklyn. Large windows framed the skyline. Sunlight spilled across polished wood floors. There were books, plants, a little studio space stocked with fresh brushes and sketchbooks. Ari ran straight to the window, gasping. I can see the whole city. Naomi watched her daughter spin, hair glowing in the afternoon light, and for a moment, she let herself believe this might actually work. Landon appeared at the doorway, silent, immaculate, a hint of fatigue under his eyes. Miss Carter, he said softly. Welcome. Naomi turned. It's beautiful. I hope it feels like a place you can work, he said. Ari peeked from behind her mother. Are you the art man? Landon crouched slightly, a ghost of a smile on his lips. That's one way to put it. Mum says artists don't sleep, Ari said solemnly. Landon looked at Naomi, amused. Then, I suppose, I'm halfway there, when Ari went off to explore. Naomi followed Landon down the hallway into the studio. A cavernous room flooded with pale northern light. The floor was splattered with old paint, though everything else gleamed with obsessive precision. Dozens of canvases lined the walls, all blank. This is where you'll work, Landon said. Naomi nodded, running her hand along the edge of the easel. You don't paint here yourself? Not anymore, he said quietly. But I used to. She looked at him. What changed? He hesitated, eyes distant. I stopped dreaming. They spent the afternoon setting up. Landon watched her with the quiet focus of someone who valued observation more than speech. Every gesture she made, the way she unrolled the canvas, mixed her paint, tied her hair, seemed to pull his gaze. When she finally looked up, he was standing closer than she expected. I usually don't work with an audience, she said. I usually don't offer my face, he countered softly. Seems fair. Then maybe we'll both learn something uncomfortable. Maybe that's the point. As the day dimmed, Naomi packed up her brushes, noticing a small light flickering under a door near the far wall. What's that room? She asked. Landon's voice was quiet. Storage. Of what? He hesitated, a rare pause from a man who always seemed in control. Dreams, he said finally, then walked away. Naomi almost laughed, but the tone in his voice wasn't metaphor. That night, after putting Ari to bed, she couldn't sleep. The city stretched below her window like a galaxy turned upside down, stars replaced by windows, silence replaced by sirens. She wandered back to the studio. The lights were dim, the air cool, and then she saw him. Landon stood shirtless at the easel, painting. The brush moved fast, desperate, strokes slashing through color and shadow. She froze at the doorway. The canvas showed her, her eyes, her mouth, the small scar on her chin, captured perfectly, like a mirror that remembered better than she did. He didn't notice her at first. When he did, he didn't stop painting. You don't sleep, she said quietly. He didn't look at her. Not for years. Why? He dipped the brush again. Because every time I close my eyes, I see you. Naomi's breath caught. You mean someone like me? He shook his head. No, Naomi, you. The room felt suddenly smaller, the walls pulsing with something electric and wrong. That's not possible, she whispered. Landon stepped back, finally meeting her eyes. His face was pale, drawn, but his voice was steady. I've painted you since before I met you, he said. Every night, in every dream I can't remember. Naomi's pulse thundered. You're telling me you, what, dreamt me into existence? He smiled faintly. Maybe you dreamt me first. It began with a color, not red, exactly. Something deeper, the color of memory before it turns into pain. Naomi woke in the middle of the night, her hands sticky, her palms streaked with pigment. She'd fallen asleep at the easel again. Across the room, the portrait she'd been working on glowed faintly in the dark. The paint hadn't dried. It shimmered wetly, as if the canvas itself were still breathing. When she turned on the light, her stomach dropped. The streak of crimson across Landon's painted shoulder. It wasn't oil paint. It was blood, real, fresh. She staggered back, knocking over a brush jar. Jesus, the door opened. Landon stepped in, barefoot, a mug of coffee in his hand. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, revealing the faint line of a healing cut across his arm. He saw the painting. Then her face. Naomi, he said quietly. She pointed at the canvas. Tell me this isn't what it looks like. He didn't answer right away. You shouldn't have painted tonight. What are you talking about? You told me to, I told you to rest. His voice softened, but his eyes were hard. Sometimes the things we paint here don't stay on the canvas. Naomi stared at him, heart racing. What the hell does that mean? He set down the mug. You felt it, haven't you? When you work here, the air changes. The way colors mix. How shadows form where they shouldn't. She shook her head. You're talking like this place is alive. He gave a small, tired smile. Maybe it is. She glanced again at his arm, at the faint cut. The blood on the canvas matched perfectly. Her voice dropped. Did you do this to yourself? No. Then how? Sometimes, he said, when you paint something true enough, it becomes real. Naomi took a shaky step back. That's insane. So is art. The next morning, she tried to shake it off. She made pancakes for Ari, braided her daughter's hair, tried to be the mother who didn't wake up with her hands trembling. Ari, ever curious, held up a crayon drawing. "Mom, look. It's you and the man from the gallery." Naomi froze. "Landon?" Her daughter nodded cheerfully. "I dreamed about him last night. He was painting you." Naomi forced a smile. "That's nice, honey." But her chest tightened as she looked at the crayon lines. Ari had drawn herself too, standing in the background, holding a red flower that looked more like a wound. That evening, Naomi went back to the studio. She told herself she'd clean the brushes, lock up early, maybe start a new piece, something simple, but the door to the storage room was open. She didn't remember leaving it that way. Inside, the air was cold. The walls were lined with canvases covered by white sheets. One by one, she pulled them down. Each revealed a painting of her, not as she was, but as she had been. Her graduation, her wedding, her holding Ari as a newborn. Every version of her life, painted by a hand that wasn't hers. Her fingers trembled as she lifted the last cloth dot. The woman in this one wasn't her, yet older. A little worn eyes, haunted. But what made her breath stop was the background. The same penthouse studio, the same window, even the same faint crack in the marble floor, and behind that painted version of her, another figure stood, a man's silhouette, indistinct but unmistakable. Landon, the door creaked behind her. "Curiosity can be dangerous here," he said softly. She spun around. "You painted these." He didn't deny it. "They came to me in dreams." "That's not an answer." He stepped closer. "It's the only one I have." Naomi's hands clenched at her sides. "You've been painting me for years. You knew my face before we met." "Why?" His eyes were unreadable. "Because every time I try to paint someone else, it becomes you." For a moment, neither of them moved. The air between them felt electric, fragile, charged with something deeper than fear. She whispered, "What do you want from me?" Landon's expression faltered. "To understand what you are to me." Naomi swallowed hard. "And if I can't give you that?" He hesitated. "Then maybe you'll show me instead." That night, sleep didn't come. She dreamt of color and sound, brush strokes whispering her name, her reflection rippling in wet paint when she woke. There was a new canvas at the foot of her bed, still damp. It showed her sleeping. Painted from above, every detail perfect, down to the pulse at her throat, and in the reflection of her half-open eyes. A faint image, Landon, standing in the shadows, watching her. Morning came without light. The sky over Manhattan was the color of lead, the air heavy with rain that hadn't yet fallen. Naomi packed slowly, movements stiff and silent. Her hands smelled faintly of linseed oil and sleep deprivation. Ari sat on the bed, watching her. "Are we leaving again, Mum?" Naomi zipped the suitcase. "Just for a few days. Somewhere quieter. Did I do something wrong?" The question hit her like a bruise. "No, baby," she said softly. "You did everything right." But she couldn't explain why she suddenly couldn't stand the sight of the studio. The smell of paint, the way Landon's eyes followed her even when he wasn't in the room. She found him in the East Wing, standing by the tall windows. He looked the same as always, composed, immaculate, but there was a tension under his stillness, like a man trying not to breathe too loudly. "You're leaving," he said. "I need space. You think distance will make this less real?" She met his gaze. "I think distance is the only real thing I have left." For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or understanding. He nodded slowly. A car will take you wherever you want. Naomi hesitated. You're not going to stop me. He gave a small, sad smile. I stopped believing I could control beauty a long time ago. She went to find Ari. The child's room was quiet, too quiet. The curtains fluttered in the soft wind from an open window. Ari. No answer. Naomi checked the bathroom, the hallway. Even the little art room Landon's staff had built for her. Empty. Her chest tightened. Ari, sweetheart, where are you? Her voice echoed through the halls, bouncing off marble and glass. No reply. Then she saw it. The faint trail of small, red footprints leading from the art room into the studio. Paint, she told herself. Just paint. Inside the studio, the smell of oil and turpentine was stronger than usual. Light filtered through the windows, pale and watery, glinting off something new in the center of the room. A fresh canvas on the easel, still wet. Naomi stepped closer at first. She thought it was another portrait of her. But then she saw the small figure beside the painted version of herself, a little girl, with the same dark curls, the same bright eyes. Ari, the brushstrokes, were alive, trembling slightly in the light, as if the paint itself hadn't decided what to be yet. Naomi's throat closed. She whispered, "No." Behind her, Landon's voice broke the silence. "I told you not to paint at night." Naomi turned sharply. "Where is she?" He looked at the canvas, expression unreadable. "You've already found her." Her pulse spiked. "Don't play with me. I'm not," he said softly. "You did this. That's insane. Look at it." "Naomi." She did. And her breath caught, because the longer she stared, the more the figures moved. Her own reflection blinked. The painted Ari tilted her head, smiling faintly. Then, without warning, the child in the painting reached up, pressing her small painted hand against the other side of the canvas. A print bloomed on the real surface. Red as blood, Naomi stumbled back, heart hammering. "This isn't possible." Landon stepped forward, voice low. "It was never supposed to be. But somehow, with you, the line doesn't hold." "What line?" "Between what's created and what remembers." Naomi shook her head, tears forming. "Where is my daughter, Landon?" "She's safe." "Where?" He hesitated. "Then, inside the portrait. For now." She stared at him in horror. "You've lost your mind." He didn't argue. "Maybe, but that's not where the madness started." Naomi rushed to the canvas, fingers shaking, trying to tear it from the frame, but the wood wouldn't budge. It was as if it had grown into the floor. "Help me," she shouted. Landon came closer. "If you break it, you lose her." Naomi froze. "What?" "She's still becoming," he said quietly. "The painting hasn't decided whether to keep her or let her go." Naomi's voice broke. "I'm not listening to this." He caught her wrist, not hard, but firm. "Listen to me. You have to finish it. Finish the painting. Complete it. If you stop halfway, she'll fade." Naomi stared at him, disbelief warring with terror. "You're insane." He met her eyes. "Then save her. Prove me wrong." For a long moment, neither moved. The air felt thick, electric, alive. Naomi turned back to the portrait. Her painted self stared out, tears shimmering in the still wet eyes. And beside her, the painted Ari reached again. Small hand pressed against the barrier of the canvas, as if asking her to hurry. Naomi grabbed the brush. "Tell me what to do." Landon exhaled almost a prayer. "Paint like you love her." Hours blurred into color. Naomi painted until her arms trembled, her heart matching the rhythm of each stroke. Every brush movement seemed to echo somewhere deeper in memory, in pulse, in something ancient. The portrait changed. The light inside it warmed. The child's face brightened, laughing silently, as if through glass, and then a sound. A real one, behind her. "Mum." Naomi turned. Ari stood there, barefoot, blinking sleepily, her curls tangled. "Why are you crying?" Naomi dropped the brush, running to her. Holding her so tight, the world blurred. "I thought I lost you." She whispered. "You can't lose me," Ari said against her shoulder. "I'm part of your picture," Naomi looked back toward the easel. The painting was blank. Again, only faint traces of color shimmered in the drying light too. Shapes fading into white dots. She felt Landon's gaze on her. When she met his eyes, they were full of something she couldn't name. "Now you understand," he said softly. Naomi's voice trembled. "What did you do to us?" He shook his head. "What you've always done. You brought something dead back to life." The next morning, the city was loud again. Horns, chatter, the hum of life. But Naomi didn't hear any of it. She moved through the apartment like someone afraid to touch the air. Ari was eating cereal in front of the window, humming softly, the picture of innocence. Everything looked normal. To normal, the blank canvas still sat on the easel where the portrait had been. Clean, white, untouched. Yet when Naomi looked closely, she swore she saw faint brushstrokes buried under the white. The ghost of a mother and child fading beneath new paint. Landon hadn't come down since the night before. Naomi didn't know if she wanted to see him again. She packed quietly, careful not to wake suspicion. Her hands shook as she folded Ari's clothes into a small duffel. "Mum," Ari said between spoonfuls, "are we going somewhere again?" "Yes, sweetheart." "Is Mr. Vale coming?" Naomi hesitated. "No, not this time. Will he be sad?" Naomi forced a smile. "He'll be fine." But her throat felt tight, as if the word fine didn't belong to her anymore. They left before sunrise. The tower's private elevator carried them down like a slow heartbeat. Naomi didn't look back. The driver didn't ask questions. He just opened the door of the waiting car. The city slipped by, glass, metal, sky, like a painting someone else was erasing in real time, for the first time in months. Naomi felt like she could breathe, but when Ari pressed her hand against the window, she froze. A faint smear of color followed her daughter's touch, crimson and gold, blending like wet paint. Naomi whispered, "No, not again." At the first stoplight, she caught her own reflection in the car window. The woman staring back wasn't quite her. Her features blurred, softened. Her eyes, painted eyes. She blinked hard, heart racing. "Mum," Ari said quietly. "You look scared." "I'm just tired." But she could feel it, the same subtle hum in the air she'd felt in the tower. Something unseen, alive, following them. They checked into a motel, upstate beige walls. A flickering neon sign outside, a world away from Vale's marble and silence. Naomi drew the curtains tight. She told herself they were safe, but when she went into the bathroom to wash her face, she froze again in the mirror. Her reflection didn't move with her. She leaned closer and saw, behind her reflection, the edge of a gold frame. Her stomach dropped. She touched the glass. The mirror rippled like wet paint. Ari's voice came from the other room. "Mum, there's someone outside." Naomi rushed out, heart pounding, but there was no one there. Only the faint outline of a figure in the fogged glass of the window, fading as she approached. Then she saw it, the reflection again, a tall silhouette standing behind her and Ari. Hand outstretched, Landon dot. But when she turned around, there was nothing, just the hum of the motel's old heater, and Ari's small hand gripping hers. That night, Naomi dreamed she was back in the tower. The walls bled color, the floor shimmered like canvas underfoot. Ari's laughter echoed somewhere far away. Playful but wrong, She followed the sound down endless halls, lined with mirrors. Each one reflected a different version of her younger, older, grieving, smiling, every Naomi that had ever existed. And in each reflection stood Landon, watching silently, as if guarding her lives like paintings in his private gallery. When she woke, the room was dark. Ari was asleep beside her. But on the wall opposite the bed hung a painting that hadn't been there before. It was small, framed in gold. Naomi's pulse spiked. She got up slowly, flicked on the light. The painting showed a woman sitting on a motel bed, a child asleep beside her. It was this room. It was her. The brushwork was precise, almost impossibly recent. And on the bottom corner, faint but legible, was a signature, L. Vale. Her knees nearly gave out. She reached for the painting, but when her fingers brushed the surface, the paint was still wet. She stumbled back, heart slamming against her ribs. The bathroom mirror flickered. Landon's voice, calm, distant, like coming through static, filled the air. You shouldn't have left. Naomi, she turned toward the sound. What are you doing to me? It's not me. Then what is this? We were painted to find each other. You and I, the art isn't the prison, Naomi. It's the map. His voice softened. Don't run. You'll only fade faster. She grabbed Ari, shaking her awake. We're leaving now, Mum. Get your shoes, baby. They ran outside into the thin dawn light. The parking lot was empty, the air heavy with fog. But when Naomi looked back toward the motel, every window reflected the same thing, not her. Not the building, but that painting. The woman and the child, caught forever in a room they couldn't escape. Naomi's breath trembled. He's still painting us. Ari looked up at her, sleepy but certain. Maybe you're painting him too. Naomi turned to her daughter, confused. What? Ari touched her hand. When you close your eyes, Mum, I see colors in the dark. You're painting him. You just don't know it. For a long moment, Naomi couldn't move. The sunrise spilled over the horizon, washing the parking lot in gold. She looked at her palms, streaked faintly with red, blue, and gold pigment. And for the first time, she wasn't sure whose creation she really was. The city welcomed her back like a stranger. The skyline glittered in the distance, silver and indifferent. Naomi kept one hand on the wheel, the other gripping Ari's backpack on the seat beside her. The last real thing she trusted. Vale Tower rose ahead, cutting the dawn in half. She parked across the street, the windshield fogging with her breath. Mum, Ari whispered. Are we home again? Naomi's heart twisted. We were never home here. Inside, the lobby was empty. The receptionist desk was unlit, the air too still. The elevator panel glowed faintly, the number 33 flickering in the dim dot. She pressed it. Nothing happened. Then a hum. The elevator doors slid open on their own, slow and soundless. Naomi hesitated. Stay close, baby. Ari nodded, gripping her hand tightly. The doors closed, sealing them in with their reflections as the elevator climbed. Naomi noticed something. The reflections didn't match. In the glass, Ari's hand was gone, her own eyes painted, not alive. She squeezed her daughter's real fingers harder. It's not real, she whispered. But the reflection smiled anyway. The elevator stopped, not at the 33rd floor. Instead, the panel flickered to life again, showing a floor that shouldn't exist. B1, a soft voice over the intercom. Landon's voice whispered, You finally came back. Naomi's breath caught. Landon, the tower has rooms even I didn't build. The doors slid open. The basement stretched before them, vast, dim, and endless. Rows of canvases lined the walls, their surfaces veiled in gauze. A single light swung above. Its sway slow, rhythmic. Naomi took a step forward. The floor wasn't concrete. It felt soft, uneven, like stretched canvas underfoot. Ari tugged her sleeve. "Mum, they're all you." Naomi turned. The veiled portraits, hundreds of them, all showed her face. Some smiling, some crying, some painted half-finished, as if abandoned mid-breath, each signed L. Vale. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Why? Because you made me," said Landon behind her. She turned sharply. He stood at the far end of the room, barefoot, paint-smeared shirt clinging to his skin. The look in his eyes was not madness, it was grief. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly. "Then tell me what this is." He gestured to the walls. "These are the versions of you I tried to remember." "Remember?" He nodded. "You painted me once. Before all this. You just don't remember it." Naomi's pulse quickened. "That's not possible." He stepped closer. "You think grief only makes ghosts? It makes gods too." She shook her head, backing away. "I don't understand." Landon stopped a few feet from her. "When your husband died, you painted someone to keep you company. Someone to hold all the love and guilt you couldn't carry. That's how I began." Naomi's chest tightened. "You're saying I created you?" "Yes, that's insane." "Is it?" His voice cracked. "You gave me a name. Landon Vale. You gave me a purpose, to collect beauty before it disappears. You gave me a company, a world. Everything I am came from you." Naomi's throat burned. "You're lying," he smiled sadly. "Then why do you paint what hasn't happened yet?" He walked to one of the canvases and tore away the veil. Underneath, an image of them both standing exactly as they were now. The same light, the same paint-smeared floor. Even Ari's small face, half hidden behind her mother's coat. "Because you remember before you live," Landon said quietly. "Just like me." Naomi's hand flew to her mouth. "No," Ari's small voice broke the silence. "Mum, is he my dad?" Naomi froze. Landon looked at her gently. "In a way, yes. You painted me from him." The air in the room thickened, colors rippling faintly across the walls. Naomi's pulse thundered. "You don't get to rewrite my grief." "I'm not rewriting it," he said. "I'm living inside it." She turned to leave, but the elevator was gone. The door had melted into the wall, replaced by another painting of her, reaching for an exit that didn't exist. "Let us go," she whispered. Landon looked down. "I can't. You're all that keeps me real." Ari slipped her hand into her mother's. "Mum, maybe he's scared." Naomi looked at the child, then back at him. "Then he's not the only one." Landon took another step forward. "I don't want to hurt you, Naomi. I just want to stop fading." He extended a trembling hand. "Finish me. One last painting. After that, you'll never see me again." Naomi's breath shook. "And if I don't?" His smile was sad. "Then I'll keep painting you until you disappear instead." For a long moment, all three of them stood still. The creator, the creation, and the echo between them. Naomi finally said, "Then let's finish this." She picked up a brush lying on the floor. Landon exhaled, closing his eyes. "Make it true this time." The brush felt heavier than it should. Naomi sat before the easel, the only light coming from a single overhead lamp. Landon stood across from her, half in shadow, half in gold, a man on the edge of existence. Ari had fallen asleep on a couch nearby, curled like a small promise. Naomi looked at her daughter one last time before dipping the brush into the pigment. The first stroke landed like a heartbeat. Landon exhaled a sound, between relief and sorrow. "Tell me what you see," he said softly. Naomi didn't look up. "I see a man who shouldn't exist." He smiled faintly. "That's how I felt about you." She painted the line of his jaw. The tilt of his eyes, details she didn't remember learning, yet her hand knew instinctively. Each movement seemed to pull something from her, something invisible but vital. The air shimmered, faintly alive. The more she painted, the more the world blurred around her. Colors seeped out of the walls. The concrete became canvas. The light itself began to flicker like a brushstroke caught mid-motion. Landon stepped closer, his voice low. "Do you remember the night you made me?" She froze. "Don't. You were alone. The rain wouldn't stop. You had a half-finished portrait on your kitchen table and no reason to finish it." Naomi's chest ached. "Stop. But you did," he whispered. "And you cried when you painted the eyes. Because you needed someone to look back at you." She slammed the brush into the jar, splattering paint across the floor. "I didn't make you. I lost someone." He nodded slowly. "And the world gave you me." The room trembled faintly, as though agreeing. Naomi stared at him, tears hot on her cheeks. "If I finish this painting, you'll disappear." "Yes. Then why ask me to?" "Because I'd rather end as something true than live as someone's unfinished grief." Her hands trembled. "You sound like him." He smiled softly. "That's because, in some ways, I still am." She lifted the brush again, forcing herself to breathe. Each stroke felt like a memory being erased. Landon's outline shimmered, faintly translucent. He spoke again, quieter now. "You know what the difference is between art and love?" Naomi didn't answer. He smiled. "Art needs to be seen. Love doesn't." The floor rippled. Paint pooled beneath their feet, turning to liquid color, crimson, ivory, gold. The portraits on the walls bled together, their eyes fading one by one. Naomi kept painting. Her hand wouldn't stop. Every line she drew made him less solid, more beautiful. Every tear she shed became a new streak of color in his painted face. When she finished the last stroke, his mouth curved in the faintest smile. She whispered, "Landon." He met her eyes. "Thank you." Then he was gone. The space where he stood shimmered once, then went still. The painting glowed faintly on the easel. Naomi approached it, trembling. The portrait of Landon was perfect, alive, serene, as though watching her from somewhere just beyond reach. A single tear fell from her chin and hit the canvas. The color rippled, and for an instant, the painted Landon blinked. Then everything went white. When Naomi opened her eyes, she was sitting in her old apartment. Morning light spilled through thin curtains. Ari was in the kitchen, laughing at something on the radio. There was no Vale Tower, no studio, no trace of him, only the scent of paint, faint but real. She turned toward her easel. A blank canvas waited, and on the edge of the table, a single brush, bristles stained gold. Ari peeked in. "Mum, are you okay?" Naomi smiled faintly, voice raw. "Yeah, baby. I think so. Are you going to paint again?" Naomi looked at the blank canvas, pure, untouched, full of silence. "I think," she whispered. "I already did." But as she turned away, she didn't see the faint shimmer across the white surface, a ghost of a face, half-formed, smiling faintly before fading into nothing. 3 years later, Naomi Hale was a name people whispered with awe. Her paintings hung in glass galleries and corporate lobbies, collected by the kind of people who once wouldn't have remembered her name. Critics called her style transcendent realism. Some said her work looked alive. Some said they could hear it breathe. Naomi never corrected them. She only smiled, said thank you, and went home to her quiet apartment above the flower shop on Delancey Street, a place filled with sunlight and the faint smell of oil paint. Ari was 10 now, curious, stubborn, and a little too observant for Naomi's comfort. The night of the opening, Naomi stood in front of her newest piece, the Veil of Gold. It was the largest she'd ever painted, a man standing before an endless horizon, his features blurred by light. The audience murmured words like genius, ethereal, otherworldly, but Naomi knew what she had painted. It wasn't light. It was memory. It was him, Landon Vale, or whatever was left of him inside her mind. "Mom," Ari whispered, tugging at her dress. "Everyone's staring at you." Naomi smiled, squeezing her daughter's hand. "They're staring at the painting. They think it's about God." Naomi glanced at her. "And what do you think?" Ari tilted her head. "I think it's about someone who didn't know where he belonged." Naomi's throat tightened. "Maybe that's everyone." The girl leaned into her side, warm and real. "He looks like he misses you." Naomi looked at the canvas again. The light in the painted man's eyes seemed to shift. So faintly she almost thought she imagined it. Almost after the reception, she stayed behind to lock up. The gallery was quiet now. Only the sound of rain against the windows. She walked between the rows of her own work faces. Colors, moments she couldn't explain. Each painting felt like a door half open. At the far end of the room stood the veil of gold. Something about it felt different now. The light on the painted horizon had deepened, taking on a faint red hue. Like sunset or blood. Naomi stepped closer. The man's eyes were clearer now, and they were looking at her. She whispered, "No." Her reflection flickered across the varnish, blending into his. The sound of dripping paint broke the silence. She looked down. A thin line of gold pigment was seeping from the bottom of the frame, pooling at her feet. Her pulse pounded in her throat. This isn't happening again. She grabbed a rag, tried to wipe it away, but the paint didn't smear. It sank into her skin, glowing faintly under the gallery lights. "Naomi," the voice was soft, male, familiar, impossible. She froze. "Landon." The lights flickered once. Every painting in the room trembled, the colors inside them rippling like reflections on water. Naomi backed away. "You're gone. I let you go. You finished me," his voice murmured. "But art doesn't end. It waits." The gold light from the painting spilled further, crawling up the wall, across the floor, spreading like veins of living color. "You brought me back every time you remembered," he said. Every brushstroke since then was a doorway. Naomi's eyes burned with tears. "Why can't you stay gone?" "Because you never stopped loving me." The gallery alarm beeped faintly, a sensor triggered by movement that wasn't hers. Naomi turned off the lights, heart racing, clutching Ari's drawing notebook she'd left on a chair. She didn't dare look back again, but as she stepped outside into the rain, she caught her reflection in the gallery window. Behind her stood a man's shadow in gold, faint but smiling, dotted home. Naomi couldn't sleep. She poured herself a glass of wine, sat by the window, and opened Ari's notebook. On the first page was a sketch. A man tall, serene, drawn with startling precision for a and at the bottom, written in a child's looping hand, "Mr. Vale says hi." Naomi dropped the notebook, breath trembling. Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating the wet street below and in the reflection of the glass. Just for an instant, she saw him standing across the road. Not a ghost, not a memory. A man alive, smiling faintly beneath a paint running down his sleeve like rain, and then he was gone. Only the shimmer of gold remained on the wet asphalt. Rain fell in thin silver sheets, whispering against the windows like breath. Naomi hadn't moved for hours. She sat on the edge of the couch, staring at the notebook Ari had left open. The sketch looked innocent enough, a man in a suit, his hands tucked in his pockets, standing in the rain, but the details were too familiar. The tilt of the head, the soft calm in the eyes, the faint smudge of gold on his collar. Landon. Naomi traced the pencil lines with her finger. The graphite felt warm. Ari padded out of her room, You're still up. Naomi forced a smile. Couldn't sleep. The little girl frowned. Did you like my drawing? I did. He told me how to make the rain look real, Ari said proudly. He said you'd understand. Naomi's blood went cold. What do you mean, he told you? Ari blinked. Mr. Vale, he comes when it rains. Naomi set the notebook down carefully, as though it might explode. Ari, when did you see him? Last night, and the night before. He doesn't come inside. He just stands by the streetlight and waits. The thunder outside rumbled low, like a breath held too long. Naomi went to the window, every muscle tight. The street below was empty, just puddles, reflections, rain. But when she wiped the fog from the glass, she froze. Across the street, under the flickering lamp, stood a figure tall, still, gold glinting faintly in the downpour. She blinked. He was gone, but the wet pavement shimmered like it had remembered him. She turned back to Ari. Sweetheart, if he ever comes again, you don't talk to him, okay? Why? Because he's not supposed to be here. Ari tilted her head. But he said he misses us. Naomi's voice broke. That's the problem. The next morning, Naomi drove Ari to school under a grey sky. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel. She told herself she'd go back to the gallery to check the painting, to prove it hadn't changed. But when she arrived, the doors were already open. Inside, the curator was pacing. Naomi, thank God you're here. What happened? He gestured toward the veil of gold. The painting was different. The man was gone. All that remained was a smear of color, gold dissolving into rain. And in the bottom right corner, a new signature. Inhale. Naomi's throat tightened. I never. The curator stared at her, pale. Did you repaint it in your sleep? That night, she sat at her easel again for the first time in months. She tried to paint something new, anything else, but her hand refused. Every brushstroke curved back into his shape. The lines formed a silhouette she couldn't stop. When she finally dropped the brush, exhausted, there he was again, standing in rain, his face half-formed but alive. Her voice trembled. What do you want from me? The painted mouth curved. To come home. She stumbled back. The air around the painting shimmered faintly, and a drop of water, real water, slid down the canvas. She whispered, no, no, no. The drop hit the floor and spread, forming a small puddle that reflected her face, and another standing behind her. Landon, she turned sharply. The room was empty, but the smell of rain lingered. That night, she dreamed again. She was standing in the middle of a street drowned in color, buildings melting into brushstrokes, cars dissolving into pigment. Ari stood across the road, waving, and beside her was Landon, hand resting gently on her shoulder. He looked different, softer, less like paint, more like light. Naomi tried to cross to them, but the street stretched, bending, infinite. Landon raised his voice calm, steady. You don't need to fear what you made. Then why won't it leave me? Because it's still unfinished. When she woke, her pillow was wet with tears or rain. She couldn't tell. The apartment smelled faintly of turpentine. And near the window stood Ari's new drawing. A woman holding hands with a man beneath an umbrella. Both smiling. At the bottom, Ari had written, "This time, Mum isn't alone." Naomi sank to her knees, shaking. She wanted to scream, to destroy it, but her hands wouldn't move. Because for the first time in years, the fear in her chest wasn't sharp. It was warm. Maybe some loves aren't meant to die. Maybe they just change mediums. That evening, when the rain returned, Naomi stood by the window again. The streetlight flickered. The puddles shimmered gold. And when she looked up, he was there, not a ghost, not a trick of light. but a man stepping slowly out of the reflection. As if the world had finally remembered how to paint him, he smiled faintly, rain tracing his face like tears. Naomi whispered, "Landon." He reached up, pressed his hand to the glass. "Finish us," he said softly, and for the first time, she lifted her hand to meet his. The glass rippled. It was raining again, the kind of soft, endless rain that blurred the edges of the city, turning buildings into ghosts. Naomi stood in her studio, barefoot on the wooden floor, a brush in her hand. The window beside her pulsed faintly with golden light, reflections moving like heartbeat beneath the glass. Outside, she could almost see him, the faint outline of Landon in the rain. Half here, half gone. For weeks, he had been coming back in fragments, in mirrors, in puddles, in the glint of wet paint. Never long enough to touch, always long enough to remember, and now she could feel it. The boundary between her world and his was paper thin. Ari was asleep in her room, clutching a sketchbook against her chest. Naomi glanced in once, watching her daughter breathe, peaceful, unknowing. She whispered, "You gave him back to me, didn't you?" The child murmured something in her sleep, a word that sounded like home. Naomi turned back to the easel. On it waited the last blank canvas she owned. The surface shimmered faintly, as if anticipating her hand. When she dipped the brush into paint, her reflection in the window moved before she did. The colors bled together, gold, crimson, white, the same hues she remembered from the night she first painted Landon years ago. She spoke to the rain. "If you're still there, if you're real, tell me what to paint." And somewhere in the rhythm of the storm, his voice answered, calm, faint, beautiful. "Don't paint what I was. Paint what I could be." She began. Every stroke came with a pulse, a warmth. She painted him not as she remembered, but as she dreamed. A man with eyes like sunrise after grief, with a smile that forgave everything she couldn't. The brush felt alive in her hand. The world outside the window shifted, the skyline bending, melting into light. Her apartment dissolved into color. Walls turned translucent. The rain came inside, gold instead of gray. Naomi kept painting, tears streaming, whispering his name between breaths. "Landon, if this kills me, let it." "It won't kill you," his voice murmured. "It'll finish you." When she looked up again, he was there, not in the glass, not in reflection, here, standing beside her. Bare feet on the same floor, rain still glistening on his skin. The scent of oil and storm wrapped around him like a memory reborn. Naomi froze, brush trembling in midair. "You're real?" He reached out, fingertips brushing hers. "You made me that way." Her breath hitched. "Then why does it feel like I'm the one disappearing?" "Because we're sharing the same canvas now." She stepped closer, resting her palm against his chest, warm, solid, beating. He looked at her with a softness that broke her. "Naomi, if you finish the painting, I stay. But you fade." She swallowed hard. "And if I don't, then I fade." Her hand tightened around the brush. "There has to be another way." He shook his head. "Art doesn't work that way. It takes one life to give another." Naomi's tears fell silently. "You're asking me to die for you." He smiled. "I'm asking you to live through me." The brush slipped from her hand. Her voice cracked. "I can't lose her. I can't leave Ari alone." Landon's hand cupped her face. "Then let her paint you back." Naomi's heart broke open at the quiet certainty in his eyes. "You trust her that much?" "She's yours," he whispered. "She remembers color like you do." Naomi turned to the canvas one last time. The portrait wasn't of him anymore. It was of them, two figures, one dissolving into light, one reaching back from the rain. She dipped her fingers into the paint, smearing gold and white across the surface, tears falling freely, Her voice was barely a whisper. If this is what love costs, I'll pay it. When the final stroke landed, the air shattered. Light burst through the room, color bleeding into everything. Walls, air, breath. Landon's hands caught hers. His body flickered, half solid, half brushstroke. He pulled her close, forehead against hers. You made me once, he said softly. Now let me make you. She smiled through tears. Promise me she won't forget. Never. The light swallowed them both. When Ari woke the next morning, the apartment smelled of rain and turpentine. On the easel stood a new painting, the most beautiful she'd ever seen. Her mother and a man standing in the rain, holding hands, their faces serene, their eyes alive. Ari touched the surface gently. The paint was still warm, she whispered, "Hi, Mum." As she turned away, she didn't see the faint shimmer in the canvas, two painted figures breathing quietly in color. The man's head bent toward the woman's, lips moving as if to say one last thing. We're home. The years folded quietly, seasons changed, and the city kept breathing its steady rhythm, horns, footsteps, laughter, and the hum of a life that forgot how to stop. Ari Hale grew up among color. Her mother's old brushes still lined the shelf above the window, stiff with dried paint, each one a memory fossilized in gold. Sometimes she ran her fingers across the bristles, half expecting to feel warmth, a pulse that used to beat in rhythm with her childhood. People still talked about Naomi Hale. They called her a visionary who vanished into her art. But to Ari, she wasn't a mystery. She was still here, in the smell of turpentine, in the rain against glass, in every shimmer of gold that refused to fade. Ari was 17 when she painted. Again, for the first time, not a study piece, not an assignment, something that came from somewhere deeper. The colors came to her in dreams, white for silence, crimson for memory, gold for love that refused to die. She worked for days without sleep, her fingers blistered, her heart quiet and steady. She didn't plan the shape that appeared, it found her. As if guiding her hand, when she finally stepped back, she gasped. It wasn't just a painting. It was a memory resurrected. Two figures stood in the rain, holding each other, her mother and the man from the stories she never told. The colors shimmered faintly. Alive in the morning light, Ari felt no fear, no sadness. Only a strange, luminous calm. She whispered, "Hi, Mum." "Hi, Mr. Vale." For a heartbeat, she thought the woman's painted face softened. The man's smile deepened. That night, she dreamed again. She was standing in an endless field of color, not sky, not earth, just light bending around her. In the distance, two figures were walking away, hand in hand. She called out, but they didn't turn. They didn't need to. She understood now. Some people don't leave. They just change form. When Ari woke, sunlight filled the room. She looked at the painting again. The rain had dried on their shoulders, but a faint shimmer of gold remained in their eyes. And for the first time, she saw something new in the background, a small figure, barely visible, standing at an easel. Her painting them, and they, in turn, painting her. Outside, the morning rain began again, soft, endless, gentle. Ari smiled, dipping her brush into gold. Her voice was steady, tender. "Let's begin again." She pressed the first stroke onto a new canvas. The color bloomed like breath, and somewhere in the quiet between the raindrops, a familiar voice, distant but warm, whispered through the air, "We never ended."